with details regarding a possible firing and more. This is Wrestling Rambles. My name is John, and you're watching the Wrestling Report. Before we move on, make sure you subscribe to Wrestling Rambles with notifications on, and don't forget to like the video. When it comes to potentially inducting Paul Heyman into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, Rob Van Dam noted on his one-of-a-kind podcast, "I think they can definitely find someone better than me. You know, it'd be an honor, and of course, if I was nominated and asked to do it, I would give it my best." During an interview with Jeremy Lambert and Joel Pearl on In the Weeds, one of Sting's sons, Garrett Borden, who was involved in his father's retirement match, said this about when the idea for the Revolution bout was first discussed. Actually happening, 100% sure, was early January. We'd first talked about it in October 2022, where he was like, "What do you think about this?" We really didn't talk about it too much until the retirement, and once that was officially announced, I had about 7.5 weeks to get ready, come up with all the plans and all that stuff. Recalling the unsanctioned lights out match between Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, Bryan Danielson said on the recent South by Southwest panel, "There was a ton of hoopla backstage in WWE when Britt wrestled Thunder Rosa, and it was bloody. There were a bunch of people backstage saying women's wrestling should not be like that. This is horrible. We would never do that. Except if you're talking about equal rights, letting women go out there and do things that men do. That kind of match took Britt and women's wrestling in AEW to the next level. You'd watch it and be like, these women are stars." At that same panel, Britt Baker mentioned this when it comes to a return to action in AEW this year. "Yeah, I do, just growing as a wrestler and performer and learning what works and what doesn't work. With all the new talent coming in and new talent I get to work with and new coaches and new people coming over from WWE, new brains and minds we get to pick, you're really doing yourself a huge disservice if you're not constantly asking everybody around you for help. The help in AEW is growing and growing. For me personally, I can't wait to get back in the ring, have a mic in my hand, and cut some promos. Stay tuned." Speaking about WWE and AEW collaborating to have Dustin Rhodes be a part of Cody Rhodes' angle with the Bloodline, Mark Henry said on Busted Open Radio, "And as far as there being an opportunity for a working relationship, which Triple H said a year and a change ago that they're open for a working relationship with AEW. It's yet to be seen, but they were open for it. This is the time. If you ever were going to do it, try to get it done. You've got 4 weeks." Bringing up the viewership breakdown for AEW Dynamite Big Business, Ringside News wrote, as noted earlier today, the episode attracted 801,000 viewers and scored a rating of 0.27 in the important 18 to 49 demographic. This is a bit better than the previous week's episode, which had 779,000 viewers and the same demo rating. The episode kicked off with a bang, drawing in a solid 1 million viewers for the debut of Mercedes Moné, according to WrestleNomics. However, as the show went on, viewership fluctuated. For instance, when Samoa Joe defended the AEW title against Wardlow, viewership dropped slightly to 899,000 viewers. Later on, during the last quarter of the first hour featuring the Elite, it fell further to 737,000. The 9 o'clock hour saw a bit of a revival, with the first 2 quarters pulling in 798,000 and 799,000 viewers respectively. But as the hour went on, viewership dipped again, with only 627,000 tuning in for the main event as the second hour wrapped up. It's worth noting that there was a Nielsen error, so the overrun wasn't counted in these figures. Touching on his historic reign as Intercontinental Champion, which is the longest in WWE history, Gunther said this on 96.7 The Eagle. "It's a little bit surreal to see your own name on the list with all those legends and greats who have held the title for a long time as well. It's also very important that you see yourself like that and recognize yourself as one of them. In my case, being on top of the list, you have to fully embrace that. It takes a little while to do that, but I'm fully there now. I'm not stopping yet. I still have a little in me with the Intercontinental Championship, and I'm fully focused on whatever the next challenge is, adding to my legacy and the legacy of the championship." Questioning on if he is interested in a career in politics, John Cena told the Drew Barrymore show, "No, if you are so influenced by this and other people, one by one, are influenced by that, you don't need a political figure to be a catalyst for change. We live in such a great society that people can orchestrate change. We are in the current state of where we are because this is essentially our attitude. What can I control if I'm upset? I can control how I behave. How I behave is influential on other people. Maybe it affects you. And then one by one person at a time, we have the ability to voice ourselves as people." Staying on the topic of John Cena, former WWE writer Vince Russo said this regarding Cena potentially being on WrestleMania 40, noting on Sportskeeda's writing with Russo, "Let's face it, John Cena does not need to do this, but like in the past, and Cena would be the one to always say this, why did he do these things in the past? Loyalty to Vince McMahon. He always said that, like when Vince needed Cena, he called Cena and Cena could not say no. Well, it's not about that anymore. So now if guys like Cena still do this, you really are starting to see that like very few people can just walk away from it." Going over potential conflicts regarding The Rock's WWE schedule after WrestleMania 40, Dave Meltzer said in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Rock is filming The Smashing Machine, a movie where he plays former MMA star Mark Kerr, based on a documentary of the same name. Based on the filming schedule, he could not do any pay-per-view matches until SummerSlam, and even that would be difficult because he'd have to train for the match while on set. While the belief in the company is that this is not his last match, there is no date for another match, and it depends on his movie schedule. Although with the nature of his WWE contract, he also could move dates around for a WWE pay-per-view show. It would be added that Ringside News reached out to a seasoned member of the WWE creative team regarding Dave Meltzer's report about The Rock's absence from post-WrestleMania 40 plans. They confirmed that there are currently no plans beyond WrestleMania 40, as WWE is yet to receive information regarding his availability for future dates. We don't know The Rock's availability for Mania. Before there's a pitch, we need to know what events he's able to make so we can pitch ideas for dates. Following his first match back since undergoing surgery in September of 2022, Kyle O'Reilly said this backstage at AEW Collision. "In moments and times like these, I'm reminded how much it hurts to be a professional wrestler, how much it hurts to hit the mat, how much it sucks to get chopped and to get kicked. I'm reminded of why I fell in love with this sport to begin with, man. I'm reminded of how deep of a roster we have, how talented a guy Brian Keith is. I'm reminded how great the AEW fan base is. I know I said, I mentioned at the time I didn't want to join the Undisputed Kingdom, but that didn't mean that I didn't want the support of my best friends. Before I knew it, those guys were out there and they're hugging me, and it really, really felt good. I'm a really lucky guy. I get a chance to do this again." Asked about returning to WWE for another championship run, Lita and Trish Stratus discussed this, as Lita first said during a Q&A session at For the Love of Wrestling. "We have touched on that. It's a great question. I feel like that should be the last question, but only because it's awesome. But people like to talk about this imaginary curse of the WWE Women's Tag titles, but I think that if Trish and I were tag champs, that somehow the curse would magically disappear." Trish added, "What do you guys think of that? Our message to the Kabuki Warriors is, you're not ready for Team Bestie." Going over Kevin Kelly seemingly no longer being a part of AEW, Ringside News wrote that Kevin Kelly has been renowned for his significant contributions to promotions like WWE, ROH, and NJPW. However, he was recently removed from AEW's roster page and was notably absent from recent Collision tapings, strongly suggesting a departure from the company. Tensions heightened when Kelly publicly criticized Ian Riccaboni prior to AEW Revolution, accusing him of defamation and emphasizing his importance within the organization. Moreover, Kevin Kelly's absence from the commentary desk during the pay-per-view show, and as mentioned at subsequent episodes of Collision, where he previously served as the lead play-by-play announcer before being replaced by Tony Schiavone, has raised eyebrows. According to the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter, Kelly may have been let go, although AEW President Tony Khan has yet to confirm this publicly or to the roster. While Kelly's absence speaks volumes, it's believed that his Twitter outburst regarding being underutilized may have been the tipping point leading to his alleged termination. With AEW recently signing the likes of Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, and Mercedes Mone, are they spending too much money? Let's talk about that in today's Wrestling Ramble. AEW has been making some big moves in 2024. We are halfway through the month of March. We are 2.5 months through the year of 2024, and they have already signed 3 big names. At the top of the video, we mentioned Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, and Mercedes Mone. They have signed all 3 of these individuals to big money contracts, reportedly. Kazuchika Okada, from reports by Tokyo Sports and the Wrestling Observer, is said to be making somewhere between $4 and $4.5 million a year. Ospreay, you would have to imagine, is making more than that, and there was, as reported in the Wrestling Report on Wrestling Rambles, it's being said that an unnamed WWE source is claiming that Mercedes Mone in AEW is the highest paid female professional wrestler in the world today. Now, if Okada is seriously making $4.5 million, almost $5 million, Mercedes is the highest paid women's wrestler in the history of professional wrestling, or just today. Maybe not the history, probably is the history. I saw that Charlotte Flair makes $5 million a year, which, first and foremost, I will be upfront here, I think that's a bit ridiculous. Not that it isn't true, because if you know anything about contracts, especially in WWE, over years, you get pay increases. AEW does a similar thing in this regard, where you will see an increase in pay the longer you are with the company. Charlotte's been there for a long time and is on top of the women's division, is one of the few draws in the women's division. So it's not that shocking, but it's still, in my opinion, too much to pay her $5 million a year. If Mone is making more than $5 million, that's insane. And then you've got Ospreay, which you would have to presume, because he's getting 5-star matches from Meltzer out the wazoo. This is now Dave Meltzer's new favorite guy, past Kenny Omega. This is his guy. This is Meltzer's guy, and Tony Khan's going to listen to him one way or another and listen to the hype and bring him in. And that's not to say that Ospreay is not good in the ring. That's his strong suit. Ospreay is incredible in the ring. I think he lacks in terms of promo abilities to a certain extent, and maybe in charisma a little bit, but he makes up for it, honestly. He makes up for it with his in-ring acumen. But if you put all 3 together, Tony Khan is spending nearly $15 million annually in guaranteed money. These are not WWE contracts. WWE can release anybody they want at any time for no reason whatsoever. They can just choose to let someone go, regardless of who they are or what they pay them, unless they've got some special clause or negotiation that they've worked out in their contract. AEW can't do that. It's guaranteed money. They have to pay them whatever the worth of their contract is, unless they do something very heinous and they end up firing them. Seldom do you see people leave AEW without their contracts expiring. So you have Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, Mercedes Mone, and they're making nearly a total of $15 million in guaranteed money annually. This is not including what they pay for the benefits of them being an employee. This is a very big discrepancy that you will see in pay and parts of the contracts between AEW and WWE. AEW signs them as employees, not independent contractors. In WWE, you have to pay for your hotel room, your flights, etc. In AEW, I don't believe you have to do that, and you also get medical benefits as well. Now, WWE will still pay for surgeries if it happens under their watch, but they don't have to. They're not contractually obligated to do so. So that's at minimum, like I said, $15 million. You're essentially paying for Ospreay, Okada, and Mone. And in the ring, Ospreay and Okada are great signings. And initially, even from critics, I saw a video from Jim Cornette where he found out how much Okada was making. This was prior to seeing his in-ring debut on an episode of Dynamite following his contract signing. Of course, he had made his AEW in-ring debut prior to this, but after he had signed, he hadn't made his in-ring debut. So let's put a little clarity on that. But Cornette was saying, and I agree with not knowing this fact, but Cornette said, why would you pay someone $4.5 million a year and they can't speak English and can't cut a promo? That's a valid point. But we heard Okada on Dynamite with the Young Bucks backstage in a segment prior to his 6-man tag team match with the Bucks as a part of the Elite. He can speak pretty darn good English, and he sounds good. He sounds better than Shinsuke Nakamura. With all due respect, Shinsuke sounds like he has marbles in his mouth when he talks. Okada is easy to understand, and I had never heard Okada speak English. I'm not a big New Japan fan, and I didn't follow his career extensively, but I had never heard him speak English before, so it caught me off guard to hear him speak English, not fluently, because we didn't go through the whole alphabet and dictionary or encyclopedia or anything like that. I don't know how much English he knows, but he sounded good when he said what he did, and the tone of voice was great too. His delivery was fantastic. So there's more justification for paying him what you are. And if it's just based on in-ring talent, I can understand paying the amount that you do for Ospreay and Okada, and to a lesser extent Mone. But they're not drawing you any ratings. We just had a Dynamite episode. This was Dynamite on Wednesday the 13th of March. And if you go look at the quarter-hour breakdown of March 13th for AEW Dynamite on TBS, courtesy of WrestleNomics, you'll see that the first quarter hour they had with Mercedes Moné, they drew 1 million viewers. And a lot of people are looking to this and pointing to this and going, look at that, Mercedes is a draw. And to which I say, no. No, no, no. No, she is not. And you need not look further than the prior week, where the opening segment on Dynamite, where the opening segment for March 6th of Dynamite on TBS was Swerve Strickland Samoa Joe Adam Cole live promo, 8 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. 930,000 viewers. Contrast that with the following week, which was 1 million. Now, if you look at the quarter-for-quarter breakdowns, the 15-minute breakdowns of Dynamite, if you're familiar with them, if you've kept up with them, a lot of the times their lead-in is the best 15 minutes of the show, and it drops off significantly after that. Look at March 6th. It goes from 930,000 people for the first 15 minutes of Dynamite to 785,000 people to the second 15 minutes of Dynamite, from the 8:15 to 8:30 p.m. quarter hour, which was Joe and Swerve versus Matt Taven and Mike Bennett through picture-in-picture, Chris Jericho hook backstage angle, ad break, recap, Young Bucks backstage promo. It doesn't really matter what's on at that point. They don't hold viewers after that first quarter hour. And if we go back to March 13th, look what happens here. We go from 1 million to start, and then we go to the second quarter hour, 8:15 to 8:30 p.m., March 13th, AEW Dynamite. They go from 1 million to 899,000. It's an Adam Cole video, Samoa Joe versus Wardlow through picture-in-picture ads. So they're still dropping essentially the same amount of viewers they typically do. They started with a little bit more. If you know anything about AEW Dynamite and why they have a good start, is because their lead-in program is very popular. It's more popular than what they do. It's typically the Big Bang Theory. It's reruns of that show that will draw more than 1 million viewers. And so you'll see, on average, from what I can recall, Dynamite breakdowns in terms of viewership, the first quarter hour will be in the 900,000s almost every single week for that first 15 minutes. And that's because you've got over 1 million people, and maybe half of them change the channel, turn it off after Big Bang Theory is over, or they'll stick around a little bit for Dynamite, realize, oh, I don't want to watch this, and then turn it off come the second quarter hour. But they'll be recorded for the first. And that's what leads to a good average for them, given that first good quarter hour. So if you want to try to give it to Mercedes here, and let's be generous for a second and say, okay, Mercedes brought in the views. That's why the views are up. They didn't explicitly state Mercedes was going to be at Boston for the Dynamite show. But let's play devil's advocate on AEW's behalf here, why don't we? Let's say that Mercedes drew the crowd in terms of viewership. You're looking at only a 70,000 fan viewer increase for the first quarter of Dynamite. That's what you're looking at. She brought in an extra 70,000 fans, and that's it. Nothing more than that. And you still follow the same pattern. And on this episode of Dynamite, you had Will Ospreay. Granted, he wasn't wrestling, but you advertised him for the show and he cut a promo. And he's coming off of 2 5-star matches, one off of the pay-per-view, 5 3/4, I believe, with Takeshita, according to Meltzer, and then just 5 stars flat with Fletcher on the previous episode of Dynamite. And you also had Okada in action with the Young Bucks. So the question really is, at this point, what are we doing here? Why are we spending AEW? Why are we spending $15 million for 3 stars when they're not going to increase ratings? And I don't want to hear about how they're going to have better matches. I know they will. Okada and Ospreay especially are incredible in the ring. No one's going to deny that. But the American audience, the US audience, doesn't know them that well. The people that do know them are the AEW hardcores, the hardcore fans. And that's the 750,000, 800,000 typically that you just can't run off from Dynamite. And good for them that they have that solid fan base. But Dynamite is stagnated. And if you're spending all this money whenever you've been a company for the past 5-6 years and have yet to publicly turn a profit, if you know anything about business, and the amount I know is somewhere between zilch and nothing, I at least know that whether you're a small business or a big corporation, if you're not turning a profit in 5 years, or at least after 5 years, that's not a good sign. And that's where AEW is at right now. There's so many people on the roster that can be cut that aren't doing anything, that are making way too much money, but especially the people at the top are not drawing ratings, and you could get rid of, and the program would not suffer at all in terms of viewership. This is something that needs to be considered. Unfortunately, in Tony Khan's case, one of his big appeals is the guaranteed money. So that's something that has come back to bite him in the butt, are these guaranteed money contracts. Are Okada, Ospreay, and Mone great signings for any pro wrestling company? Of course they are. They are big names to some description. But so far, they have not proven to be draws on weekly television. And it remains to be seen if they ever will be. Could you put them in a feud and a program that gets attention? Could you create a viral moment in AEW that gets Will Ospreay, Kazuchika Okada, or Mercedes Moné to the next level and allows them to draw 1 million people maybe in the 4th quarter, the 5th quarter, 6th quarter, etc.? It's a possibility. But I wouldn't rely so much and have so much faith in Tony Khan's booking to do something like that. From what I've seen, that's not going to happen. My question is, what is AEW doing? You've signed 3 people for almost a combined $15 million a year, guaranteed money, and that's not including healthcare, employee benefits, the price of a hotel, plane ticket, etc. You're spending a boatload of money for 3 people. We're midway through March. We're only 2.5 months into the year, and we're already in the red. We have been in the red for years for this company, for AEW. What are you going to do to turn it around? And that's what I want to know. How would you deal with this situation? What do you think about it? How do you feel about Ospreay, Okada, Moné in AEW? Be sure to let me know how you feel about this in the comments, what you would do maybe to remedy the situation. but from looking at it, the ratings are continuing to stagnate, and so far none of these signings are helping. It's just going to keep AEW, as stated, in the red in terms of not making a profit. That's all I've got. I will see y'all later.